Good morning. How's everyone doing? Okay, it looks to me like the broadcast is coming through. Looks like we've got a stream. If somebody could, please go ahead and check in for me and let me know that you can, in fact, see and hear me. After last class's period problems, I don't feel as confident as I used to. Uh-oh, no, I don't want that. I know, right? Hold on, docs. Let's see my chat. That's what I want. Okay, let's see what we got going on in the chat bars. Good morning. Okay, everybody sees and hears me. That's a good thing. I don't know if you were here, John and Rosemary, yesterday, but I went on for 10 minutes lecturing without turning the software on. And I started seeing the chats. People were waiting for me to start the broadcast, but I'd already been lecturing for quite a few minutes. I felt a little bit like a fool. You know what? Why am I not? Okay, there we go. And let me see where's my chat? Where's my chat? Share my chat. Oh well, it's acting weird today. Okay, I know, and I'm sorry I missed you, Rosemary. I hope that the practical went well. Uh, I hope you it's the last one of the year, I'll bet. Good morning, Nicole. Good to see you as well. Fantastic. Glad to see everybody here today. All right, so let's go. Let me see. What was I going to do? We were going to go over the exam, the final exam today. Let me go to the exam folder and see if I can find it. There we go. You should be able to see my screen now. Hopefully you can see my screen now. Go ahead and type in the chat bar and let me know. Can you see this screen? Can you see my screen? Yes, you can. Okay. All right. Fantastic. For some reason, my broadcast is running a couple of seconds behind, so I'm not getting the detail like I wanted. Okay. All right. So here's the deal. It's a 50 question exam. It is 60 minutes, just like the other exams. Okay. 50 questions in 60 minutes. 20 of those questions are going to be uh, 20 of those questions are going to be um, uh, cumulative, and 30 of them will be from the last 6 chapters. If you could hold on just a second, for some reason, I'm not. Final exam review. There we go. Okay, there we go. Now I can see it. All right, I just wanted to be able to see your chat questions. Okay. All right. So here's what I want you to know sort of is the cumulative material. I'm really focusing more on the organizational aspects of developmental psychology in focusing on these 3 chapters. And then, you know me, I'm interested in the death throughout the lifespan because I think death informs our policy, what we find interesting and important to study. And then I want you to know Piaget and Erikson because all good developmental psych students should know that. Now, here's the deal. I will give you folks an interesting little tidbit, a little secret. I took developmental psychology at UNC Chapel Hill, and I did not learn a stinking thing all semester. I promise you, when I graduated from that class, I didn't really remember Piaget or Erikson. So I didn't do a good job, and I want you to do a much better job than me. Okay, so I do want you to know sort of these very important thematic things as well as Piaget, Erikson, and the causes of death. Number one, you'll notice I've got cumulative material 20 questions. if you look at these bulleted points, the number represents how many questions. So I've got 2 questions about the value of the developmental perspective, right? So how does being aware of developmental psychology help and inform? Yeah, yes, I do remember it now. Honestly, John, I remember how disorganized of a student I was back in the day. And that's the thing. I set my expectations a little more reasonably, I think, for students. I'm a PhD in psychology, and I didn't take an awful lot away from that developmental psych class. So if I can get 8 or 10 facts completely jammed into everybody's head, I'll consider it a success this semester, right? So let's see. 2 questions on the value of the developmental perspective. Remember, lifespans have increased, and we're very interested in this thing called well-being, not just living a long time, but we want people to be productive and happy as well. So know what well-being is, and know what specific numerical advantages, numbers, ways in which we can demonstrate the value of the developmental perspective. I have 2 questions on the periods of development. Remember, this class is organized along periods of development: prenatal development, there's infancy, then we have early childhood, middle and late childhood, they call it. Then we have adolescence, we have emerging adulthood, then young adulthood, middle, middle adulthood, and then we have late adulthood. Also, if you remember, we talked about the difference between the young old and the old old. Remember, uh, uh, we talked about all of these different these different age groups, and why it's important to compare people of these different age groups. So you want to know, I've got 2 questions, just basically, do you know the names associated with the different age groups? And then if you remember, this course was also organized by domains. So for each domain of development, we would have a chapter. Remember, we had by physical development in infancy. And then we had a chapter on cognitive development in infancy. And then we had a chapter on socio-emotional development in infancy. So the one thing I do want you to understand this semester is the way in which we organize the study of human beings. So I want you to know the periods of development and the domains of development. And then I want you to know about, we talked about the terms critical periods and plasticity, a couple of good basic concepts that I think you ought to take away from this class. So chapter 1 is really, I want you to have a an appreciation of the developmental perspective. Now, chapter 2, if you'll remember, we talked about the value of the developmental perspective is it helps us avoid the pitfalls that take out people before they get to a ripe old age. And one of the most important areas that happens, in my opinion, is in prenatal development. That's where you can really, really help your baby or harm your baby, more importantly. So I think that developmental students really ought to have an appreciation for sort of prenatal development. So I've got 1 question on the stages of pregnancy and teratogens. I've got 1 question on prenatal testing. I've got one super silly, stupid question on genetics. I swear to God, you better not miss that question. And then 1 question on the birthing process. So I just want you to go back and look over your birth and well baby care stuff from chapters 2 and 3. Okay. Now, then, if you'll remember, and yeah, and I'm sorry, I wasn't even paying attention, Nicole. There are better resources for teaching these days, but you know what? It takes a lot of effort to marshal up and organize those resources, and I sometimes feel like us teachers don't do as good a job as we could doing that. But you're right, there's definitely better things to teach. Can we get that one from now? Right. Okay. So those are the questions for those basics for the beginning of the book. And then I do want you to know cause of death throughout the lifespan. We've talked about the cause of death throughout the lifespan. It seems like at the beginning of every biological chapter, infancy, early childhood, middle childhood, every chapter, I would go back and talk about the cause of death. I don't know if any of you were paying attention or if you laughed or thought that was weird, but in I think it was the death and dying chapter, I showed you the entire chart as a whole that we've been talking to. I do have questions on causes of death throughout the lifespan. Why is this important? Because it will tell you what you should be focused on, what the risks are for you and your family as you try to raise yourself and be a happy, healthy person. What do you need to worry about in infancy? Why do you need to buckle your children up in the car seats, right? Why do you need to exercise and do your cancer screenings in middle age and late adulthood? So I've got 3 questions that ask you to know the causes of death throughout the lifespan. Basically, you just need to know what's dangerous at different times in the lifespan. Can anybody tell me what's the most common cause of death in middle and late childhood for 9 and 10-year-old kids? Can anybody tell me? It looks like I'm running a little bit on a delay, so I'm going to have to wait for that answer. I don't know how far behind I'm running. It's kind of annoying that way. Accidents. There we go. Fantastic. Rosemary. Can anybody tell me what the most common cause of death for infants is during the first year of life? Can anybody tell me? Tell me. And I'll wait for that. Okay, so you're going to know those things. Now, I then have 3 questions on Piaget. I'll be honest, they are general stage questions. I want you to be able to identify the stages of cognitive development based on the descriptions. I really didn't do any more details than that, but I do want you to know what the sensory motor stage is, what the preoperational stage is, what the concrete operational stages, and what the formal operational, and even we talked about the post-formal. No, actually, the most common cause of death in infancy is birth defects, congenital abnormalities. All right. That was just a trivia question. Don't worry about it. Okay, and then I've got 3 questions on Erikson. Actually, I think there's a couple of questions mixed in the new material as well. Maybe even 4 or 5 questions on Erikson. I'm going to ask you to generally know. Remember, or actually, let me ask you. Erikson said that we have these things called crises in our life. Is a crisis something that we should avoid? How bad is a crisis according to Erik Erikson? How bad is a crisis? Do 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 do. Okay. And can anybody tell me how many? No, absolutely right. If anybody wants to describe what they mean, what he meant by crisis, I'd love to see that in the chat bar now. Right. We have them all the time. Right. The crossroads, if you will. Fantastic. All right, then what I want you to know is I'll give you descriptions of people in different situations thinking about different things, and I want you to be able to tell me if they're focused on generativity versus stagnation. Are they working on trust versus mistrust? Are they working on intimacy versus isolation? I want you to be able to tell me which stage the person is dealing with, or what the most important thing going on in their life. For me, as a 50-year-old man, if I asked you what's probably most important to me, you, if you know your Erickson, should say, oh, he's working on building some sort of a legacy, taking care of a family and finding time for himself. Okay, exactly. Thank you, Ronrika. Ronique, no, they are not bad things. Now, here's the deal. Does the research say, do all of us have identity crisis in middle age? Are you likely to have an identity crisis? You know, they talk about those people where we all just kind of freak out, a midlife crisis. How common are midlife crises? Do you know? Okay, so I'm going to ask you three questions about Erik Erikson. So those represent what I would call the cumulative parts of the test. I want you to know the value of the developmental perspective, a little bit about prenatal testing, and then I want you to know Piaget-Erikson and the causes of death. Okay, I hope that makes sense as a cumulative uh, uh, set of concepts for you to know. Um, it's I I didn't know how much detail to go in, but I just want to make sure that you have sort of a general grasp of the developmental perspective. And the details will come back, and when you see things in the news, it'll jog your memory for some of the specific details that we've talked about. But what I really, really, really want you to take away is just this broad developmental perspective. Okay, that's sort of what I want you to focus on. Now, let's go back to the exam. We then have 6 chapters. Chapter 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Okay, so here we go. There are about 5 questions from each of these 6 chapters for 30 questions. Actually, I think it turns out I had 4, I had 6. Let's see. 4, 6. You know what? Actually, I should fix that. There's only 2 questions on patterns of cognitive decline. I changed one. So let me take that out, but I'm going to fix it. So I have about 5 questions per chapter. That was my goal, more or less. Okay. So can you folks see this well enough? I hope everybody can see it. Make it just a little bit bigger. Okay. So here we go. Number 1, visual changes in middle adulthood. I want you to know that we all need bifocals starting in our late 40s and 50s. What are the patterns of sexual behavior in middle adulthood? Well, you know what? We're not doing it nearly as much as we did in our 20s and 30s, but men still do it more than females. We're talking about population rectangularization. Remember, it turns out that people don't die young like they used to. So if you look at the survival curve, what you're going to notice is that it stays close to 100% a lot longer and drops down. There's actually a picture in chapter 15 which shows you what I mean. I want you to understand that sort of little shape of the survival curve. I want you to know a little bit about the neurological changes that are occurring in middle adulthood. And there's also a slide there where I talk about strategies for protecting your cognitive functioning in middle adulthood. What do you want to get? What do you want to bet that one of those strategies is going to involve getting yourself a little bit of exercise, huh? So go to the chapter 15 and look at that slide and look at the strategies for protecting your cognitive functioning. And on the test, I'm going to ask you to identify all of the strategies that you can use. Okay. Anybody have any questions on chapter 15? Okay, physical and cognitive development in middle adulthood. That's what we want on chapter 15. Chapter 16 is going to be socio-emotional development on middle adulthood. Okay. If you'll remember, we talked a little bit about patterns of well-being in middle adulthood. There's actually a chart which shows you how people's perceptions of their purpose, their autonomy, their sense of accomplishment, how all of these feelings track through middle and late adulthood. And what you're going to see is that as you get older, some of these measures of feeling useful and powerful are going to fade, but they're at their height in middle adulthood. And remember, we suggested that most people my age in your 40s and 50s are feeling pretty good. So I have two questions. There's a chart in chapter 16 about patterns of well-being in middle adulthood, and it's a line chart with lots of colors. Look at that chart, okay? And then there was a chart on George Valiant's lifestyle study, and I want you to look at that. And he talked about different lifestyles. Okay, there were happy people, sick people, and I want you to see what does your lifestyle have in middle adulthood suggest is going to happen to you later in life. So he sort of found that there were three broad groupings of lifestyles that people reported in their middle adulthood. You know, some people happy, some people sick, some people sad. And then he tracked them for 20 years to find out what happened. And he found that one category was more likely to die than the others. So I want you to look at that particular chart. So there are two particular PowerPoint slides that I want you to look at. Now, there is also a slide on personality styles and life outcomes. So, in my introductory psychology class, I have students take the Big Five personality test. We don't talk about it as much as we probably should in an intro psych class, but what those students don't know is that their personality styles do sort of have implications for what's going to happen later in life. And I hate to say it, but my neuroticism, my lack of agreeableness, do not bode well for the length of my life. And so what I want you to do is go look on that one slide and see which of those personality styles are going to help you live a longer life, okay? And then we had one slide on grandparent caregivers, and I want you to know what the difference in outcomes for grandparents based on part-time versus full-time grandparent caregivers. All right, does anybody have any questions on socio-emotional development and middle adulthood? I'm actually trying to be pretty specific. So I really do want you to see which of those big five personality styles are associated with a longer life or a shorter life, I should say. Uh, uh, which of George Valiant's lifestyles is most likely to leave you dead at 80? And what happens to grandparent caregivers when they're asked to take on full-time caregiving roles? Okay, chapter 17. Let's see. Oh my goodness, let's see. Okay, right. Chapter 17 is we're talking physical development and late adulthood. I want you to know which kind of accident is most likely to kill you in late adulthood. And when you know this, how is that going to affect how you are when you're around your grandparents and your older parents? I have an 82-year-old father with one leg right now. So I think about this type of accidental death all of the time. What happens to your vision in late adulthood? What is that common problem that everybody has in their vision in late adulthood? I want you to make sure you know that from chapter 17. What does it mean when we talk about compression of morbidity? I think I've mentioned that once or twice in class. What exactly does that term mean? There's a slide on there, and there's a definitional question on the exam that wants you to know what the compression of morbidity is. Now, there's also a slide from chapter 17 where they ask the question, why exactly do people get old and die? And there are a couple of biological and stress related theories that talk about exactly what does it mean to die and why does it happen. There's one slide, and there's one that talks about your Hayflick limit. It's sort of a genetic explanation for death. There's an evolutionary explanation for death. There's a stress hormone explanation for death. So basically, what I'm going to do on the test is I'm going to give you descriptions of two of these theories, and I want you to match the theory name with its description. Okay? Now, in chapter 17, we also talk about the loss of senses in late adulthood. So I want you to know, I ask you one random factoid about the loss of sensory perception in late adulthood. So there's one chart where we talk about how your smell, your hearing, and your sense of touch in pain is going to change. I'm actually thinking about that slide right now. I want you to go look at that slide, and there's a question. And in fact, you know what? For those of you who are here in class, I'll give you a hint because I'm not sure if everybody's going to watch this review. The sense I'm going to ask you about is smell. So there's one question on your loss of smell in late adulthood. All right. So those are the 6 questions from chapter 17. What's the most common accident in late adulthood? What's the common vision problem that affects almost all adulthoods? What does it mean to say that there's compression of morbidity? Be able to match the definition and the name of 2 theories of aging, and tell me how your sense of smell changes in late adulthood. Okay. Oh, there you go. John Barris with falling. Absolutely. He spilled the beans. But you know what? Those of you who are 26 minutes into this review, if you're still a good sport in here, you should know that. So you need to know that on the exam, John Barris. You know, my dad with one leg, and he's 82, he's fallen. He falls regularly. And so I'm always trying to be around him, catch him, because you just never want him to fall. They say if you break your hip at his age, you'll die within a year 50% of the time. So I don't want that to happen to Pops. Okay, that's chapter 17. Um, Actually, I take that back. Chapter 18 is a little bit different. I have 2 questions on how your thinking abilities change in late adulthood. Okay, so we talked, I think, about crystallized versus fluid intelligence. And then I want you to talk about how your ability to pay attention changes in late adulthood. I remember those 2 questions. And then there's a slide where we talk again about how to prevent or minimize cognitive decline in late adulthood. So I have one question for that. So chapter 18 isn't represented as thoroughly as I would have liked it to be. Okay. Uh, I have 2 questions on self-esteem in late adulthood. Actually, you know, one of the things that happens as you get really, really old in your 80s is your self-esteem, unfortunately, does seem to go down. You don't have as much power. You might be wearing diapers. You can't feed yourself sometimes. You need help getting a shower or getting dressed. Of course, you don't feel as good about yourself as you used to be. So I have 2 questions on self-esteem, how it changes in late adulthood. There are 2 questions on romantic relationships. What are their value in late adulthood? And what happens when your romantic relationship dies in late adulthood. There's a question on the value of friendship in late adulthood. And I do want you to know that one of the things that old people love to do is sit around and think about what it was like throughout their life. In fact, Eric Erickson suggested that was the major psychological task during this age, to reflect back on your life and to feel good about what you had done, that you had made the right choices. And so this self-reflection is an important part of late adulthood, right? And do you folks remember that 109-year-old war vet Robert we met earlier? Boy, didn't he have some good stories about growing up and the things that he had done. And he had a lot of really great reflections on his life. So there's a question on that. Okay. So those are the 6 questions from chapter 19, which is which is socio-emotional development in late adulthood. Okay, now chapter 20 talked a little bit about death and death practices. I talked, there's one slide on cultural patterns and death practices. Where do people die? How do people die? So I've got 2 questions on that that you should be able to answer. Go look at that slide on how Americans die. And then I did talk about the one study with Langer and Rodin's study of autonomy and health outcomes. Remember, in order to help somebody live a long time, they need to feel like they are in control. And in this particular study, the old people in the retirement center that they gave plants to lived longer if they were forced to take care of those plants. So getting a plant didn't make them live longer, but having the responsibility of taking care of the plant. So it was the autonomy and responsibility that helped people in this retirement center avoid physical ailments and dying. There's a slide where I talked about how people at different age groups think about death. And so I have one question where I ask you to tell me what a person at a certain age in life is probably thinking about death. I'm thinking about that slide right now. And then there's a question on what an advanced care directive is. And I just want you to know what the definition of an advanced care directive is. Old man and his cats. Absolutely, right? Okay. So, that is actually all that I have to say. I hope I gave you some hints that will help you do this exam. This exam is due by next Wednesday. However, I'm going to be honest with you and tell you I don't absolutely need it until next Friday. Now, the due date is still Wednesday, but if you have to put it off and you're willing to contact me, I will accept it as late as Friday. Okay, I just have to pick a date, and I'm trying to get my paperwork done as early as possible. But if I know all online students have different activities and schedules and patterns, so if you got a big family event coming up, or you've got 3 exams on Wednesday or whatnot, I can work with you, but just communicate to me so that I know what is going on. When are you opening it? It should be open right now. I wish you hadn't said that because now you're freaking me out. Uh, Hold on, I'm going to check that. It better be open right now. Final exam. Oh, it is open right now, Rosemarie. It is actually open at this moment. You freaked me out there for a minute. I set this stuff up at the beginning of this semester, and when it doesn't work, okay, yeah, it is available. I just checked and looked, and it is definitely on there. Okay, fantastic. Okay, cool, cool. Oh, no, no problem at all. Okay, you know what? That is all I have to say. It's been great meeting each and every one of you and getting to know you. I've had a great semester. And I just want you to know that if there's anything I can do for you, I'm here to write recommendations. My job is to help students get to the next level. So if at any time you folks need help while you're here at Wake Tech, and even after you leave Wake Tech, I mean, my job is to help students. So I really try to do it, whenever. So if you need any help, just don't hesitate to send me a message. Okay, uh, that's all I have to say. If you don't have any questions, then I will go ahead and let you go. Okay, John Barris, are you still on the live YouTube broadcast right now? If you are, shake your head yes. Okay, all right. Thank you. Oh, no problem. It's been great getting to know you, and I just wanted to uh, uh, thank you for being great. Hey, folks, y'all have a great time. If you need anything, don't hesitate to send me a text. And you know what? I just sent John Barris a video call message because I'm trying to see if these two technologies work together while I had him here on the video call. My microphone on the laptop is not working, John. That's why you're not getting any sound from me through that. But thank you very much, folks. Y'all have a great day. I look forward to seeing you soon. And take care. All right. Bye.